So today we've got Suzy Bova from Carer Connex. Suzy has 30 years of teaching experience in disabilities, specialising in the area of autism. She's worked across the various education sectors, Catholic, private, public and alternative units in both primary and secondary schools. She's here today to share her knowledge so you can advocate for your child and support them in having successful and positive school experience. Welcome, Suze.
Hi, how are you, Michelle?
Good, thank you. Good. So just today I want to talk a little bit about helping parents support their kids and having a good experience at school. So in your role in Carer Connex, what have you seen as the areas that parents need help with, and how do you help them help their children?
I think often parents that come to me are parents that are frustrated with the system because they can see their kids struggling with school and they aren't happy, or they're starting to show signs of school refusal.
So school refusal, that's something. So what does that look like? Just kids refusing to get out of bed or getting to the school gate? How does that play out? Or is it different?
Often it comes from a result of anxiety and not feeling success at school. So they have problems getting their child into the school because they're not having a positive experience. They know they're not coping.
Yeah.
And they know they're not up there with their peers, so they don't want to look inferior to their peers.
Okay.
And the anxiety can then get to a point that they find to jump that hurdle just to get out of bed and go and face school is too much.
And then that's what the parents are trying to cope with.
Yeah, some of these parents are coping with that, or they're really concerned that they might end up like that because their child's struggling so much at school and feel like they've lost their whole self-confidence and their self-worth because they feel they just can't do what their peers are doing.
And that then makes it hard on the parents, because parents don't even know how to always deal with that. So you would help parents with combating that issue? Like you can help with...
So I suppose I start off talking to the parents to find out what specialists they have been working with. Is there a diagnosis already in place? And then going through that information, and then also give them an opportunity to empower them for what they can advocate for their child at school. Because we've got to keep in mind a classroom teacher potentially has 30 kids in their class, and they might, statistically, they say 1 in 4 will have some sort of learning problem. So you think a quarter of the class have got learning difficulties or behaviour difficulties, and that teacher has to manage getting the curriculum taught, meeting those goals, and catering for all those individual kids' needs.
So that's where the parents want to really advocate for the child so that they can help the teacher see the needs of the child and going to bat for their own child, making sure they can get the support they need.
I think they become the voice for the child, because I think sometimes as a classroom teacher it can be quite overwhelming when you've got all these other factors you've got to take in. And the other thing is, a lot of teachers are generally trained in their craft.
Yeah.
Some do maybe a unit or two of special ed, but I can tell you now, after 30 years, I'm still learning. So 2 units at uni on how to cater for all the special needs that you might come across in your life in a classroom isn't enough.
It's not going to cut it. And that's so good that you're coming from the teacher's perspective and I'm coming from the parent's perspective to hear that, and that me advocating for my child and coming and saying what's happening at home and having that open conversation with you would be helpful for you as a teacher and for the child, my child, and for me as a parent.
Absolutely. Using that communication, having open communication, because home does impact on school and school does impact on home. Especially in the area of autism, a lot of our kids mask really well and they look like they're coping, and then they come home and that's where the whole meltdown happens and it all falls apart.
Been there. Yeah.
Because they've had to keep that all inside because they don't want to look different.
Yeah.
And they're trying to work out not just if they're coping educationally, socially. Kids on the spectrum work really hard to fit into the neurotypical expectations of society. So it takes a lot.
Takes a toll on them.
Yeah.
And they get home where they're comfy, they're safe, they'll just let it all out.
Yeah. Home's their safe spot. Mum, dad, their siblings, they know they've got the unconditional love, so
they can let
they can let it go, and they might say horrible things, but they know it's not that they're actually hating their parents, but they're lashing out for all
the things that they've kept in during the day.
They've had to bottle up.
I'm sure that's so common. Like that was very common with us with Josh years ago. It's still common. I'm sure it's one of those things that, you know, parents don't know how to deal with it.
Yeah.
So how would you, so you're saying, so have an open conversation with the teachers. What else can parents ask for that would help the child in school? Like, because it is hard going, my child needs this, I think this, when you know there are, like I said, 25 other kids there. What are some of the things that parents can advocate for that teachers would be able to provide in any of the school systems, any of the school placements systems?
As part of New South Wales education, NESA, the expectation if a child has a disability will probably have what we call an individual education plan or an IEP, individual plan, where the teacher creates that in consultation with the parents. The parents can actually bring their specialists like their OT, speechy, because these people are looking at all different aspects of how to get the best outcome for the individual. So having an IEP is a great place to start. It's a great place as a point of communication, and you letting the teacher actually understand your child's hidden needs. Because this is the thing with autism. Kids, they don't have a broken leg. They're not in a wheelchair. They're not missing an arm. They call it a hidden because on the surface, you forget that there's a disability until they have that meltdown or until there is that aggressive outburst.
Yeah, and that's when it comes
out of their frustration or their refusal to even engage.
And you know what is hard as well though, because it's a valid point, you can forget it, and when the parent said to bring it up to the teacher or to even the special needs coordinator, whoever it is, but even as a parent, it is very hard to say, my child has this, because it feels like you're sometimes throwing your kid under the bus. Oh, when they get home, this happens, or in the morning, this happens, because nobody wants to essentially bag out their own child. But that's what you need to do. You need to sit there and say how bad things are or what is going on. And that sometimes is just hard. Like, it's actually hurtful to go, my son kicks and screams when he gets in the car in the afternoon because of this, or my daughter does this. So it's actually, even though the conversation's good to have, I'm sure I'm probably not the only parent that just struggled to say these are the issues we're having. So I think that open communication is key. And if we know that teachers actually want to hear that, or they need to, it's important, then we can sort of advocate better for a child if we're prepared to say those things or to have an honest conversation without fear, I guess, that the child will be looked upon badly, or that it's going to be a problem, or they're going to be put in some sort of box, or that's.
Well, I think the other great thing about advocating for your child, you're also educating people in your path that your child comes into contact with. About autism. Autism doesn't fit in a perfect little box.
Yeah, it doesn't.
Each child with autism will have different needs. They'll have different sensory needs. They will have different educational needs. The way they're wired to how they learn best will vary.
How they display their
how they
recognise it in them, the issues.
Absolutely. When they're frustrated, how they express that, what their meltdown looks like can be very different. Some kids can be runners. They won't say anything, but bang, they're gone.
Yes.
They're a runner, where other kids will physically take it out in the immediate environment. Or another kid could be frustrated at the time, or something's happened, and they actually react the day after. Because of something that happened yesterday.
Once they've processed it and comprehended, then it comes out then.
Exactly.
Which can be that delay processing.
So we can't just say there's one size fits all if someone's on the spectrum.
Well, I remember
every
our Josh
kid is individual.
Didn't react at school. His behaviour was wonderful. He wouldn't get angry at school, but he'd get to the car park and just let loose. Or there was an occasion where he head bang a pole at school because he was so frustrated. But it was very internalised until he was in a bit of a safe place with us.
Yeah.
But for others, he was just the good boy that sat there but didn't do work when he couldn't understand it.
Yeah.
It just didn't do anything, as opposed to get up and walking out or having things. So they are very different, and we had to then approach it differently, because we could see the need, and the teacher just sort of maybe wasn't doing his work, but it wasn't so expressive, so they couldn't just look and go, right, there's something going on. It was
no, because if the teacher doesn't see the whole picture, they just see that bit. So they might form a judgment based on that. The amount of times I've heard that kids, they just refuse, they don't want to do work. But the thing is, you really need to scratch beneath the surface and see what is driving that behaviour.
Yes, it is, isn't
right?
it?
Is it a function that they are trying to get out of, or something that they just can't deal with?
And we had that situation once where Josh wasn't doing his work, and he came home and said to us that his brain wouldn't let him write more than one line because there was a bird chirping outside and the ceiling fan was on in the classroom, and that alone just made he couldn't think anymore. But to someone else, it could have been he refused to do his work, but for him, it was just too much. Having the bird, the ceiling fan, and thinking about writing was just overwhelming for him. So it was just taking the time to try and understand why he wasn't doing it. And I know for other kids, it's that what might appear as procrastination is just the inability to know where to start.
Yeah, they don't have that processing and sequencing ability. Yeah. So the whole task just looks way
too much.
Too overwhelming, even though you might think, but he can write a story, he knows how to write a sentence. But it might be that starting point, just to start there.
Where to start. Or even if it's go get your pens, get your book, sit down, open your thing and do this. It's like, okay, I'm not sure where that
exactly. They remember the last instruction and they forgot the other four things.
So they're sitting there quietly.
Yeah, they're sitting there. Some will scan and they'll look at their mates and sort of pick up on those cues. Others will just go, whoa, too much, shut down.
Yeah, of course. Okay.
So
that's the really big thing where the parents and the teachers need to have the open communication.
Yeah.
And the IEP, like you said, so there's because IEP includes, I know with ours, it was included some steps and what do we want to, not fix, what did we want to work on that term? And then what are a few ways to do that? And then some outcomes when we can see that that's now been done. So I don't know if that's the same sort of for everyone, but that was what our plan sort of covered.
IEPs are generally about setting some goals so you can see that you are moving towards helping them with the change, whether it's to help them in their reading, help them in their engagement, in their social interaction, even help them regulating their own emotions and behaviour, regulating their own environment, because ideally you can't go out into the world as an adult and think everyone's going to change the environment.
Yes.
So I believe the ultimate goal is that someone with autism understands what their needs are. So they know what their triggers are, so they can scan an environment and make their own judgments.
Yeah.
Okay, if I spend too long in there, that's going to do my head in.
Yeah.
Or, okay, I can go and do that for 10 minutes and then I'll need to go and take a break and then I'll come back to it. Yeah. And that's how I cope with that environment, which I find very distracting or overwhelming.
So they can advocate for themselves, regulate themselves. Yeah. And even as adults, we
that's
sort of tend to do that.
That's the ultimate goal.
Yeah, because there is this thing about the world needs to change. It's like when you know that so many kids with ADHD, autism, any of the diagnoses, they're so different. The world can't change for all of them. We can be more kind and more understanding, try and seek to understand, but we can't just go the whole world has to change for kids with autism, because it'd be changing every day for all different people. But if we can help our kids, and that was always our thing, was helping our child be their best in the world, so we know they stood the best chance. He stood the best chance of understanding people, being social, volunteering in the community, whatever he wants to do career-wise, like give him the best opportunity regardless of his circumstances, as opposed to hoping everything was just going to be dandy when he went into the world.
Yeah, because it won't be perfect. It's not perfect for anyone.
Yep.
That's why people change jobs or move from one place to another. They go to a place, They either like the dynamics or they don't, and they move on.
They change.
Or the conditions of, you know.
So it's helping the kids have that best chance to do that, and your speciality is in that schooling environment. What can be done? Because it's very formulative years, and it's a lot of years.
Yeah.
So to help them have a good experience rather than just get through each day, get through, which is what it is. Since we get through, it's help them thrive essentially at their best level, not compared to everyone else, but just their best.
Yeah.
To their best.
To set their goals to where they want to get, and we talk about just schooling, but it's never just school by itself, home by itself, community by itself.
Yeah.
I mean, ideally, we want to look across the whole. So, you know, skills we learn. School is a practice for out in the community. School is a practice for our future jobs. School is a practice place. It's meant to be a safe place where we learn.
To then go out
and
as
we've
adults.
got people to help us on that journey of learning.
Such as teachers, principals, special aids, parents.
Exactly,
friends,
and all our allied health professionals, which a lot of parents and most schools are very open to getting the occupational therapists in to do a session.
Okay.
Because then that way, if they're in the school, there's that link and communication. The more we all talk to each other and have an connected, holistic approach, I believe the more successful the outcomes will be.
Okay, and parents can ask for that in the school environment. They can ask for OT support, or they can bring an OT.
Yeah, they can ask. Ultimately, it's up to the individual school and their policy. And with COVID, there's a lot of different restrictions that come and go with what's happening. But you can ask.
You can ask.
Some kids I've worked with don't want outsiders coming in because they don't want to look different to their peers, and they rather do their OT, speech,
and that's psychology, the child,
outside.
Isn't it? It's like helping them. If that's what's make them comfortable, and then that sort of needs to be honoured. I think there's this thing of you have to do this, you have to do this to the child, but it's like supporting them in the environment that's going to help them best. It means sometimes separating that and sometimes bringing it in, and it's really working with your own child to sort of see what.
Yeah, and I think it's about just educating everyone who's interacting with your child what your child needs.
Yeah.
So the IEP or the IP is a great place to start.
Okay, so a parent should, if they don't have one of those, that should be on things they can speak to the teacher or the principal, deputy principal, or someone about.
Yeah, you need to have goals, you need to have a plan, so you're all on the same page.
And then the child can also see, you've seen it there, look, this is a goal for you, and you've now done that. That's really cool.
Exactly.
That's really great.
And I think for schools it's really important to be able to give that to parents so the parents can actually see that their child is achieving, because
moving forward.
Yeah, because a lot of parents in the daily grind of dealing with the meltdowns and everything sometimes don't feel like change is happening. So having those goals and markers
can
helps.
Show you. And then you can look back on them.
And you can support the parents in believing in themselves
and show that it's
a win-win. Working. If everyone works together, it becomes a win-win, and the child's got the best outcomes.
I agree. And then you can show them, and you can look back on it. And so that's the thing. You can speak to the teachers and say what you think they need, what would be helpful. Obviously, you can't demand the teacher do everything, because if they've got 30 kids and a quarter of them have special needs, the teacher can't do that. So what is it that the school need to provide, or it's like are required to provide, so sort of adjustments or changes or...
From the Disability Discrimination Act, there is legislation that's called the Disability Standards for Education, 2005.
That's for
and
Australia.
You can Google that. That's across Australia.
Okay.
And in that actually says that every child has a right to have the adjustments to help them access the curriculum and to have learning.
Right, okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
So it is the responsibility of the school to put adjustments in to help that child access the curriculum. Okay, whether you need to bring the level down or let's remember, just because a child has a disability doesn't mean they can't be gifted and talented as well.
Yep.
And sometimes that gets missed too. They don't get extended where their gifts are, even though maybe their literacy or their spelling's not great, but they can remember fantastic details and they have a passion for history or science.
So because we're so busy focusing on the deficits, we're not looking at the strengths and going, so we're so busy this, like, hang on a second, but did you see that, you know, your daughter can
so
do
celebrate their strengths.
Yeah, and focus on those even. You can help.
If you can focus on those, then that gives the child their self-worth, and then it gives them the confidence that, okay, I'm not crash hot in this area of reading or spelling, so, okay, I'm going to get a learning support teacher to help me with this.
Yeah.
Or parents choose to have tutors that will help them.
Or sometimes even acknowledging, like if you have that strengths-based approach, you know what, you're not fabulous here, you don't enjoy it, we struggle, but you're really good here. Maybe we just can accept that, you know, you're just not going to be X in that area, and that's okay. Like, we're not all the best at maths and English and history and science and things around the home and things family. Like, we have areas we just don't love and not going to thrive in. It's okay to go, let's not really worry too much about that if it's not detrimental to their well-being or to their education, and then focus on this because you're amazing at that. And I think if there was a bit more of that and parents are aware that's okay to go, this area is going to be a bit of a battle, so we won't worry too much, we'll just do our best, but we won't spend, you know, extra 2 hours every single day concentrating on it, when we can actually help you thrive more in this area and just keep that area that, you know, like, do your best and that's okay. And this other area we can concentrate on, then maybe build them up, that area up, which then might go and lead into other areas anyway.
Well, it's shown that if you work on someone's strengths, it helps bring up.
I'm a big fan of that strengths-based sort of thing, focusing on the good and
that is
the positive.
That is the big push in psychology and counselling today. And I think with teaching, yes, we're always, with NAPLAN and everything, we're always looking where the problems are. And yes, we do need to know where the deficits are. We need to have a baseline so we can see what has to be filled in. We do need that, but I think sometimes we get a bit too bogged down with what we can't do.
But
of course the 3 R's, I believe, are really important.
Really important. And that is lacking in some areas. Like, some people are like, can we just get back to that? Can we get, there's so much else in the curriculum now that we get bogged down, they're not great at this, just get back to the basics that's going to see them through life and help them in the other areas.
Those life skills that they can go out, they can fill in a form, they can read a newspaper, you know, they can be a critical thinker, that they don't believe everything they see on YouTube or Twitter or Instagram
or anywhere, even someone speaking to them,
TikTok,
or anything.
To have some understanding that not everything's 100% true, which is another battle that you will have with some children with autism, because they take everything so literally. And
that critical thinking is really important, as that opening up their mind to different ways, and that's when that I think also comes back to focusing on their strengths, because then they get that confidence to be able to try something new or think about this, as opposed to, oh no, I have to just stay in my little thing because that's my comfort zone. It is that thinking.
Oh, that's a big thing.
It is
encouraging them to move out of that
beyond it. Even as adults, it's hard. For kids that just know they already aren't doing so well here, to try something different can be really, really hard. So I think that's where the school environment can be really nurturing, or it can really break them if you know. And that's where the parents have to be aware and, you know, push a bit beyond the boundary, I think, but not so much that it traumatizes them. Like, it is a balance. But again, if you have that relationship with the school and the school's on board, and, you know, there's great friends around, or there's a few things like that's part of that nurturing environment that is so important.
And use your allied health professionals to help you get that whole balance.
It's that holistic sort of look at them, which does come into school, because it's very easy to go, that's school, that's home, that's this. But if you look at the amount of hours, 6 hours a day, you know, for 13 years, sort of essentially, if they go through year 12, there's a lot of time there that can be used to help grow them, support them, nurture them, and bring them out, like you're saying, to have a successful school experience, not just oh, thank God it's over, you know, or thank God the day's over.
Well, the thing is, with social media, all the lines are blurred. You know, school doesn't just stop when you walk out the gate.
Yes, that's very true, actually.
There's stuff that flows over into home, community, peer relationships. You know, if you're struggling with peer relationships at school, that can flow over.
It does.
Social's a very big thing. And then how your behaviour impacts back on the family at home because you're not coping.
Yeah, affects the siblings,
Yeah.
affects there's so many other areas we could.
We could. There are so many dimensions.
There are, I know.
Absolutely.
But it's
not just one thing.
So we've covered the IEPs. Thank you for
Yes.
that. The having the good communications with the school, and like it's very
and let them know. Be upfront and honest.
Be
what
honest.
your child's needs are.
which is so important. And the what was that act called? The
Disability Standards for Education.
Okay,
2005. You can
Okay.
Google it
Okay.
easily, and there's fact sheets. There's plenty of information
Okay,
on
so
it.
that'll
If
be
you
excellent
feel
to
you
know.
need to be more empowered and knowledge when you go to front school.
So it's having that back
to
that you
ask.
know you have the right to ask that.
To give you that confidence
Yep.
of knowing what you can look for. You can go onto the NESA site and you can find out what adjustments can be put in
Very
place.
good, that's
Do your
good.
research before you go into school so you feel confident for
Yeah.
what you can ask for.
And what they're likely to be able to help you
Yeah.
with, as opposed to, and then you don't get a whole lot of no's. We can't do that. We can't do that.
Yeah.
And then you both sort of know, which is a really, again.
And
comes back
that's
to
where
that.
the negotiation comes in of what they can and how they can and how it'll work.
Excellent. Excellent. That's been great. Thanks, Suzy. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
And I'm sure that'd be a great help with some of the parents, and might touch on some of the other subjects another time. That's a really